So this is the mighty birch tree, as seen here in its natural glory in northern Canada. In an early winter day, as you can see, many of the leaves have fallen. There is snow on the rooftops, and it is far from in bloom. Now, what does this have to do with toy soldiers, you wonder? More specifically, what does it have to do with these dwarfs? Well, we're going to talk about that as far as how what the birch tree does can turn into little miniature scale leaves. Now, first job, of course, is to gather the goods. So what you're looking at here in my hands is the seedling buds that dangle and hang down off of the birch tree. So when I was out walking the dog in the neighborhood, I was able to gather a handful of these things for myself and get collecting them. Now, what they look like is you begin to crumble them, and these will actually break apart in your hand. You can just, I don't know if anybody's ever rolled a cigarette. I suppose you can sort of just manipulate them like that and crush them up. And what you're getting out of them is a component of the husk that protects the seedling, and then a whole bunch of little seedlings. And there's 100 or so of them packed into this little pod. So that's what I did initially. What we're aiming to get out of it, and the scatter is, this isn't a whole pod, but this is sort of what it begins to look like. Now, the thing that we're trying to key in on, of course, here is these little bits like that, right? So these are the husks that protect the shell, okay? And you can see them here. So they have that kind of leaf shape, and that's the desirable part that we want out of it, okay? The part that we don't necessarily want is just these little buds like that. Okay, so we're going to try to filter those out of it. In fact, this little picture right here shows you a nice close-up of what we're really after out of this thing and trying to get. Okay, so that's what we're trying to filter out. So what I did about this is, after I collected them in here, I took it outside and I kind of just took all these bits and sprinkled it down, if you can imagine, and then there was a light breeze out, so those little seedlings are super lightweight, and they just tend to just puff away in a mild wind, leaving me with just a whole, well, not entirely. I guess we can see that there's a few of the seedlings up here, but for the most part, all the bulk of what's down here is all of that leaf-shaped stuff that I have filtered out, and that's what I've gained from there. So now that I got all the right stuff separated, it's time to apply it to the base. So here's my finished base that I'm using for my dwarf army, with all of its runic business in there. But as you can see from here, we've got all these little leaf shapes, and I've just simply glued these down with just clear drying PVA glue and scattered them in a few different spots. What I have done with some of them is I had to get really watered down PVA to seal them over the top afterwards, just to make sure that they stick. But it dries all clear and it doesn't dry glossy, so it's all perfectly fine. With this other base here, I did add a touch of color. I just used some orange ink wash to give it a little bit more strength of color onto it. I guess I should mention that going back to the beginning when you saw the birch tree in the fall, this is the time that I didn't have to do any coloring. But honestly, you could go back to this snapshot right here and you could add some color to this stuff. If you wanted to make it more green, or if you wanted to make it more red or orange, you could certainly do that by adding in some ink wash or some pigment and just shaking it around in there and making sure that you crumble it up afterwards so that the leaves become separate. There's no reason you couldn't do that. If you actually got back to this tree here in the earlier summertime, those buds would be much more green. However, they would be full of a little bit of sap, so you'd actually have to dry them out. And I've seen some other guys do this where they lay it out on a baking sheet after they've done their crumbling and separated those two bits, the seed from the husk, and actually had to put it into like a toaster oven for 10 minutes on a really low heat to dry it out so they wouldn't be sticky. But anyway, so now I'm going to go in and do the rest of these guys and make them go on the leaf scatter. By all means, you can probably, without using your imagination too much, come up with all sorts of other ways to make uses of miniature leaves for your scenery and basing projects. But that is going to become what my dwarfs stand on, so I'm looking forward to them all done. And I hope this is really useful for you guys in a way of using nature to team up with your models and getting a better look with really no cost at all to you. Hope you enjoyed. Good day.